Hey everyone, thanks for joining in and hope you can see me and hear me okay. I'm Andy McSweeney from Andy McSweeney Photography and Photo Tour Bruges, in case you don't know me and are tuning in for the very first time. This is also my very first time doing a live cast like this, so excuse me as I just check my settings and make sure everything's cool. Yep, apparently this is working. I hope, again, you can see me. Boy, am I nervous! All right. Well, welcome to Ask Andy Anything on Photography. Yeah, that's the title. For the next 2 hours, I'm going to be taking any question you might have on photography with joy and pleasure. All you have to do is leave a comment, and I should see it on the side like I am now. And, well, hopefully we're going to have a little fun out of this. I can see a few people are already watching, so hello. Thank you for tuning in. My wife is on the side, so she might show up in the background as she grabs something or helps me out in one way or another with stuff. Maybe we'll grab some camera props and that kind of thing as needed. But frankly, folks, it's more of a Q&A kind of thing. You're welcome to ask me anything about my photography, about your photography, whether you're a beginner with a smartphone or whether you're a pro as an old hand. As most of you know me from, I'm also known as Photo Tour Bruges, which is the rockin' photo tour I started back in 2012. Had about 2,000 guests between the small group tours of 4 that I do, as well as the yearly free photo walk of 50 or 100 that I do. And we're going to talk a little bit about that while I suppose the room fills up and people hopefully show up. I don't know. It kind of takes the pressure off that there's not 1,000 people watching, which is nice. I have this whole fancy setup. It's very surreal. Okay, well, I figured to keep things interesting and maybe just, I don't know, fill some space while we all settle in. I'm going to switch over and make sure that I can show you my screen because I can. There we go. You should be seeing that. And I'm sure Facebook will confirm it on the 10-second delay I'm watching. Anywho, as you can see, I have some photos lined up, and I just really quick wanted to run you through who I am as a photographer. You know, some of you may know me from our 2-hour session on tour where I tell you to love everything in photography, and that's all well and good, and we're going to talk about that, of course. However, I don't think I've ever really sat down with anyone long and properly and given out my history as a photographer. I am a working pro these days. I do interiors. I do people in portrait and some event photography like we're going to see. However, of course, I keep busy as Photo Tour Bruges for my main thing, where I've had the pleasure of helping out 2,000 people with their photography. Who knew that I had a database of photography when I started this thing in my head, and just, you know, doing the hard work and learning this stuff and all that sort of thing has been a journey for me during doing the tour. And it's also been a journey as an educator, which I guess I sort of am, even though technically I'm sure I'm just a photo guide. Anyways, to show you around my photography with some photos. Hope you enjoy this and it's not too boring. We got about 5 minutes to kill, you know, so hey. First and foremost, like on the photo tour, each and every time, I want to remind you to love everything in photography because it works. Creativity, heart, and passion are one side of the coin where you're making the art and speaking from the soul right there. And, you know, that's, I find the pleasurable, enjoyable, peaceful side of photography. So give that side a go if you're not. And on the other side of the coin, make sure you're doing the practical love in photography, which is just like anything in life you want to advance or move forward. You care and you make the effort. Could be spending more than $50 on a camera. Could be sitting in a location more than 2 minutes so a crowd moves, or you can dig into the scene a little more fully. Or it could just be, you know, tuning into shows like I'm doing right now so that you can improve your photography and just open things up a little further in the future. So that said, and it's nice to say it because frankly I have not had much chance to do this over the last few months as Photo Tour Bruges with the tough year. So yay to getting that out there and not choking too hard. Why don't we move forward with some photos as promised, ladies and germs? Well, I'm going to start way back when my relationship with photography was just as a little kid with his family way back in the day. This is definitely film time too, so no retro filters on this. And, well, I always sort of loved photography as a memory box. I think if we take anything out of this medium, we have to take our memories and these little devices through the camera and then through the photo in one way or another, just triggering those memories and, something to revisit for the heart and soul. As a little boy, I was cheeky and a chappy. I apparently like to smile for the camera, so there's that. I didn't ask Santa for a camera, so don't think that I was some child prodigy in this medium by far. I was more concerned with Hot Wheel toys or maybe a new little bike, something like that, or at least a ride on the day at the carousel. And, well, being a kid growing up doing all this stuff, photography was always part of the memory box. My mother was actually quite into photography. She was a Minolta girl, and that was nice to think about as I got more into photography later in life. But you can see embarrassing photography is, of course, part of it because everyone has the wall of shame, and I am no exception. I can't believe I'm showing this to the world. Speaking of which, here's me in my teenage years with very long and unruly hair. This was taken about 2 weeks before I left my native Montreal, Canada, for what turned out to be 25 years and counting living abroad, and especially in Europe. And this is me about a year into that travel, where I was in love with the First Lady and, well, just living life. I'd lived in London for a good year, and all sorts of cool things had happened. So let's move from there into when I got into photography, when I started carrying a camera for myself and just, exploring what I could do with the camera. Long story short, I was paid for my second roll of film, where I was just feeling it out after borrowing a friend's Nikon with a wide-angle lens. And I pretty quickly got the bug because, if nothing else, I got paid for my second roll of film. I don't do this for the money, or trust me, I'd probably tone down the arty-farty, but I just enjoyed that feeling of sort of being recognized for some work that I was instantly enjoying and fully in love with. So I learned to watch, and I learned to shoot, and I learned to do all that sort of stuff. I found a few old photos. Here's a couple bikes in Amsterdam from way back in the day. They're not high quality right now because this is all from film and I don't have a nice scanner to do them all over with. But I'm sure you can see some of my early works. We're exploring a lot of themes of travel, which is sensible because I was largely backpacking and doing the traveler's life with a European passport, thankfully, of living places and getting a little time to unfold. Sometimes just on a quick holiday, like on the way back from Australia, where I discovered photography as part of my life. I got a couple of peaceful and just relaxing photos of Bali as I was passing through, so sometimes it was on the sly. But I lived the hippie life, and quickly I gravitated towards people photography. Even though fundamentally I'm still fairly shy, or especially back in the day, we're quite shy towards full interaction with people, which is part of why this video thing is trippy. Well, I found that the camera was a nice little medium for connecting to people, and also hiding behind the camera a little bit added to my confidence that was still sort of budgeting in those young days of Andy. And you can see I was exploring and just trying things out, sometimes lucky strikes and sometimes just playing with the aperture and moving around with composition and all that good stuff. And as I settled into London for one of my many stays, that was a great place for people. Herbie was one of my earliest portraits that I really found stood out as I sort of developed a little bit more as a photographer. And I can't do this presentation without showing Joyce, who was a regular at this pub in West London I worked at. And, you sometimes think to yourself, oh, I got to get a photo of Joyce. Got to get a photo of Joyce. And then the time you finally remember, grab your camera. She does that. And then you hear rumors about her in the day being with, the 60s crowd and living at large. So that lady must have modeled, and, it's part of what I love in the relationship with photography. Also got a couple of DJs, which was fun. Mr. Carl Cox, one of my biggest catches, 3/4 turntable techno DJ. felt real good in those early days to get that. And actually, speaking of music, I gave up photography for about 7 years. This was about 6 months into me living with Mrs. Andy over here in Bruges, when she didn't mind that I took over part of the living room with my decks and music and all that stuff that I was exploring at the time. We're not here for my DJ story. I'm just sort of poking around, guys. Thank you. Yeah, we're not here for my DJ story, so we'll pass through that pretty quick. The nice thing about doing the DJ thing is that it was actually a clean break from photography. I took like 3 rolls of film during that entire odyssey with all that vinyl, guys. I was focused on music. My budget was focused on music. I was with Mrs. Andy towards the last half of spinning music and trying that out. So, photography just wasn't part of it at that point. But I never forgot it. And coming back to it, I think, when it was digital after that long journey in music for 7 years, I think it was good for me for a full reset of just where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do, and maybe even just have to start over from basic tasks. But it also was fun. So what can I say? Anywho, moving forward, we come to when I came back to photography, which was, this first day of 4 visits and a year and a half in India. The missus and I saved our pennies, did our jobs, and, worked the work so that we could decide to go to India for 6 months and do some traveling in our youth to really explore it. It was somewhere we both always wanted to go, even before we met each other. And, on my first day, or I should say our first day, she's right over there, so like I said, I'm going to look over every now and then. We ended up at a street market. I talked to a fella for a couple minutes, which is I find critical for street portraits. And when I said, I'd like to take your photo, he pulled down his glasses and this happened. And the second I saw that, I knew I was done with music and photography was my way. You got to love it. You got to enjoy what you want to do. I was also fresh into digital, so I saw the results singing at me. I was in India, so I had something completely different to play with in the culture and tapestry of life. I was hooked. So for realsy, no take-backsies, Andy's into photography. And since he has 6 months in India, he can explore one way or another, doing one thing and then trying different stuff, and maybe even trying one thing and doing it differently. You pull up to the Taj Mahal and you see all the photos that have been taken before. You try and find something different just by crawling up to a rooftop cafe and hanging out for a while. You look at the architecture and the life, and you look at the people that are walking through and see what story you can build out of that. And it's one of the reasons I've always loved travel, even before photography, was this tapestry of life that just tells the story. And salt fields. Even those can be fascinating, especially when you're chilling out in India. This one on the 4th visit, where for 3 months the missus and I just stayed in one place and didn't travel outside of the region except for on the scooter through those salt fields and local area over and over. Not bad, eh, baby? Yeah, she's smiling. All right, cows. Cows are cool, so we got to show one of those from India. I got to say, in India, as a photographer, I went through my journey, if you will, without hopefully sounding too pretentious. I always found I was gravitating back towards people because, frankly, especially in India, they're really open when you just go for it. And I don't mean getting in someone's face with a camera or, disturbing their moment, especially a monk like that, but giving it a try and living life. And if they catch you, go up and show them the photo. You get a smile 9 times out of 10. It's worth the other 1 in 10. So yeah, people were very friendly, open, and fun over there. This is my business card for a good 10 years now. Can't let go of that one as hello. And you can see with all these people, you get to have some real fun and mix around and see what you can do as you're figuring out your photography yourself and this wonderful country called India. It works. A little bit exhausting, but worth everything, especially when you find that lady the next day with a print from a 1-hour shop and say, "Thank you, Grandma." And she cracks open with a smile. Crazy old lady, she was wonderful. Yeah, backstage, also a little easier access over there than in the West, where we're fully organized, securityed up, and not always keen to have strangers in the back. Probably helped, of course, that I'm a Westerner visiting their country, but still, you just take the initiative and you see what happens. Oh, and that is the hammock and house that the wife and I spent 3 months in at the end of our last journey in India. So that's just to show you what total Zen looks like, and whew, so good. All right. I can't leave India without talking about this place, which is only even a detail of this place. This is something I've been digging through on my archives over the last week, and maybe if you've seen me over on the Instagram and Facebook, you've seen a lot of these. Namdroling Monastery, our first trip to India, we got to go here and, and just hang out. They were really friendly. Really mellow vibe, nice little contrast to India too, which was of course mellow, but another culture when you get to the Tibetans and them settled there for 50 years onwards. Mostly we were hanging around the monks, and thankfully my photography was good enough that I showed them a few shots and they let me have some access and, not really minding with me taking photos as we hung around and just enjoyed it all. And actually, I got to go back for the second of those 4 visits to India to sharpen my skills and the story of the monastery when they let me have access to the monastery a little more deeply for about 4 months. So that was fascinating, definitely good for my photography to feel comfortable going up for these close shots that are a little bit intimate, if you will. That's taken with the wide-angle lens. I'd say 15 millimeter on the full frame and 10 millimeter on the crop. Excuse me. And you can see jumping into the middle of the ceremony is great for a result, but working with the monastery obviously added a lot towards my confidence and, just feeling right, taking some of the bold moves you have to get in documentary and street photography. So that was good for my process. Real good. Nice place too, highly recommended, and the sights you see, even if you're just visiting there for a day, pretty special. Yeah, fun to hang around those festivals too. They're really colorful people. You can see the monks already in that really rich red and yellow, and then when a festival rolls around and this opens up, as a photographer, I'm pretty inspired. And well, if you're looking for inspiration in your photography, obviously, with the COVID situation, it's a little more limited. But once the road opens up, get out there. That's why I ended my podcast with that line every time. Okay, moving on and trying not to be boring. We have a little backstage photo that such access occasionally grants you, which I felt pretty good about. Also, you get to go to some of the spaces that you don't normally get to set up a tripod or, have a monk wander around for you as your model in the scene. So real nice there, and I was happy to donate the photos to the monastery as thanks for all this. Stay tuned for more. And as you can see, you get a couple of special surprises as you go along. I mean, this one bleeds Steve McCurry's Afghan Girl. And just as having him as one of my influences heavily as I studied and absorbed photography, felt pretty good just for me to get a shot like this. Oh, and special also includes a shot like this, as well as a few hours just getting to sit in front of him. And I guess since I'm in trouble in some places for showing this, I might as well show you that, which is, part of the story too, and part of the photography that became part of my life after this experience. When we got back to the West and I jumped back into it, to use the pun on the photo, I wanted to continue to love everything in photography. I got that sign in India and it really captured my imagination. I got to develop the concept more while I was doing the tour, but I realized as I got back to the West, since press photography wasn't really as active as it used to be as a potential living, especially based out of Belgium somehow, or at least to do some of the stuff I wanted to do, and also just wanting to spend time with Mrs. Andy, not live a Skype relationship, settle into this love that has kept her tolerating me for 18 years now. Well, I had to figure something out. And as I think you've noticed from my photography so far, there's a lot of creativity sort of leaning in there. I certainly still have work on the technical side, although that's being helped certainly by 8 years of doing the photo tour. And yeah, just always trying to keep the story in mind, fool around a little bit, not knock against the gates too hard, but just try and tell a story. And I think from India and my time with the monks, I always found whatever I was getting into, which we're going to slowly wrap up here, I just wanted to have some fun and have an interesting story in front of me. Yeah, things I care about, things I find interesting, things I find are relevant to our culture in these times, sometimes even for your creativity. Anywho, don't need to burn it all down, just need to have some fun, go fast, and I won't say break rules, but maybe bend them every now and then. And tell a story. That's what I've been aiming for, and if we're not getting too thick on the advice in the intro, it's what you should be looking for in your photography. Okay, a little abstract piece there from when we dragged a TV about 50 kilometers to look cool on the coast. My dad's, or my father-in-law's, I should say, factory out in the outskirts of Bruges that is now closed. The old Uco for your Brehlings. That's a little spot I got to explore. And from passing through London once or twice more, I got some creative takes, as well as just slightly less abstract or nutty takes to make sure there's a balance to everything. I want to have a conversation with my audience for my photos, even when I'm going arty-farty. So you got to explore both ends of the spectrum, from crazy to dead conventional. All right, scoot around, have fun. That's the advice for all this stuff. Not to make this intro too long, I'm just going to take a little peek how many people we have in the room. Oh, we've lost people. Right on. Good. Well, those time wasters are gone. And I have some comments. Awesome. I'll ask my wife to read into those. Maybe grab her Facebook and do that. And folks, to give you a few more photos and the story of Andy, I started this photo tour Bruges in 2012, as I've mentioned a couple of times. I will remind you, of course, that I'm available for photo tours daily, and it's not just for the tourists who visit this fine city. So it can help you with mettre your photographie in Flams, en français, and especially in English, so feel free to drop by. It's fun for me. It's been great for my development as a photographer. You know, just even from smartphones to the big fancy cameras, it's really been a journey for me. And you know, every year when I host that big open walk of 50 to 100 people, like we had on the last big photo walk, thank you, Yono Photography, for that photo. It's been fun. And day to day, I get local groups, I get touristy groups, I get to explore my creative photography. Certainly spent the first few years of the tour looking through landscapes and architecture and trying to be interesting there for my tour guests for the photos I show them on the iPad. And you can see I have a pretty gorgeous city to work with, so certainly when you live here for 18 years, you can start piling them up, including this one recently from the lockdown times where the locals were putting hearts on bridges and other sweet things as we enjoyed our city for ourselves for a spring for once. Anywho, with the job, I try and explore and continue to get a little bit creative with things, you know, look for something different and have a little bit of fun catching it. Even conventional angles like conventional places like the Jan van Eyck Square. I certainly take wide photos, but I look for something special. And over time, I get those nice clouds without photoshopping. And I continue in the abstract and play around a little bit to keep it fresh for myself and hopefully you all. What else? Little details. Always got to look out for those. And day to night is a beautiful city and has been really great. Great privilege and fun over the last 8 years of doing Photo Tour Bruges. Next to that, just to show you a little more of my work, and then I'm going to take your questions, I promise. Some of my commercial work as an interior photographer. Once people started hearing how I could do some photos inside and out, people and otherwise, the hotels started calling every now and then towards getting a shot of their place, which felt pretty good for yours truly. And they always include coffee, so that's nice. I like coffee, especially at work. And actually, I enjoy the zen quiet of 5 hotel rooms just to photograph and then collect a coffee at the end. And places like the Brugge Beer Experience have been fun to call clients. They do events too, so I get to flex my muscles on the street and people. And even Sotheby's has called me up out of the blue to get a photo document of one of their fine pieces that were going up for auction from the Basilica of the Holy Blood. Well, we have a few people in the room. Welcome, welcome. Thank you. I see photos too. And I see my Auntie Sylvia saying I'm a sweet boy. So hi, Auntie Sylvia. Thank you so much. We miss you guys. And oh, good. I'm having insults thrown at me by Paul Corneliuson. Shout out to Lupa. Just for that, I'm going to show you all some more photos of my work, which has been on the commercial side doing portraits and especially engagements. The lovers come by and somehow they decide to have me get the shot for them and have fun. Hi, Matt and Rachel and everyone else. And even couples who are already married drop by, which is rather nice. And those loving couples who are just here for a drink, a bit of fun, saying, let's get a document of our time and invite Andy. So real fun. Families also there. Very nice to have a tapestry of life. Corporate functions have also passed through. So good afternoon. My name is Andy, and I will be your photographer this afternoon. 10 years of catering pays off in this job. And you can even see these ladies who dropped by as friends. They all got headshots and some fun other shots. And this one that was my favorite of our session together. And every now and then I get a solo traveler like Miss Hamza. Hello. Looking beautiful, and you were wonderful company for the day, madam. Thank you dropping by. And I even get a few locals like Mr. Benoit, who is one of the top sommeliers in Belgium, with prizes to prove it. And he asked me for one of my very first portrait sessions here in Bruges, so he could have a 1 meter by 1 meter print of this in his little wine bodega, which was a very nice thing to do, and he was very nice company. Covered his wedding later, too. Him and Helen. Another couple locals just to prove I actually do work around here. Look at those 3 looking cute as a family and asking me to grab photos of them. That was nice. And the occasional wedding is not outside of my purview. I'm interviewing the bride and groom just as much as you're interviewing me because I don't want you to be a nightmare. So it's really easy when it's Tony and Sonia asking me to do their wedding photos. Oh, and a few more local faces like our friendly Mayor Dirk de Vaal, who is the second mayor now to be kind enough to let me into his office to take a quick portrait. And on the loose outside, the first mayor who let me into the office, but I love this outside photo more, Mayor Renat Landuit, in a candid little street moment that I couldn't resist sharing with you all. And I don't just go for the politicians and celebrities around Bruges. I mean, we do have our J-Los and our Jay-Z's, but we have us regular folk, and I like to document all of us. It's actually very Belgian in the social system that you don't look too far up or down your nose. So definitely looking out for those locals of all sorts and varieties, and especially those locals that I get to know so I can harass him on the boat and even chase him to the repair dock and even end up taking a few photos of his lovely family. Hey, Mikey. Also lets me get one of my favorite portraits in Bruges, which is the Joss. The Joss is a mighty piece. It is somewhat like the Kramer, where it has power, weight, sustenance, and a aroma of excellence. What can I say? Not for the photo, but just the character. So that's the Joss. And street events, moving around town where we have a lot of variety and interesting things going on. You can see, especially like costumes in Bruges, that I get plenty of opportunities to work it as a photographer nowadays, whether for business or pleasure. And finishing it off, you can see a couple more event photos. What are the controversial things with Zwarte Piet as part of not ignoring what else is going on beyond, Santa showing up. And the Holy Blood procession, as well as some backstage moments. Part of what I love as a photographer on the loose, if you will. Really lets me explore and continue to just have fun doing this. And wrapping up and towards the end, a few street shots of Bruges, just real quick to round it all out to my favorite end of the medium. Street photography is so much fun. So please have some confidence and give it a go. And, you'll never know what happens, like a fraternity showing up yearly and having a really crazy chair fight right on the streets of Bruges. All right, it's all art, it's all fun. Keep doing it. I love the street. I'm just at your questions, ladies and gentlemen. But first, I want to remind you to take a drink and thank the lovely wife for tolerating you as you run around with the camera doing your silliness. And red means stop. So I see a few questions. I'm going to drink a little bit of tea, and then we're going to take your questions and answers. Whew, this is all so exciting and new. Look at this. Does my wife have any good questions handy? She's not very good at technology, so I'm on this. All right, first comment. Kuhn. Hi, Andy. What would be the best all-round lens if I could only pick up one? I've got a Fuji X-T1, like street photography and portrait. 35 millimeter, 1.4, 2.0. Good question, Kuhn, and as a Fujifilm shooter, I'm especially happy to help you with that one. Well, to abstract it a little bit beyond Fujifilm for the question of what lens to use in street photography, I think it's like all photography. It does come down to a lot of personal choice and taste. I find actually the most important thing in street photography to me is a little bit of confidence, whether you're shooting from far, whether you're getting in close like I do with the wide angle. I think you have to judge your confidence level. If you're not afraid of getting caught and then just smiling and saying, hi, I hope that's okay. Trust me, 9 times out of 10, it goes okay. Well, you're going to be fine with pretty much any lens you decide to go with, even up to like a 14 millimeter wide angle, like I use a lot of the time. Having said that, well, I like fairly wide, but I'm a little bit bold, and even then sometimes I've missed some great shots because I'm too far away. I think you're on the right track for 35 millimeter, or if we're talking a crop system, this would be 23 millimeters, just to be sure. But 35 in a crop system is also 50 millimeters, a nice middle but back reach lens, so you can get in close but not have to be too close. The only thing you're going to have to think of when you think about low aperture lenses like a 1.4 or even the 2.0 aperture lens is that, of course, you're going to want to make sure to get your focus right for it to be in focus as far as the subject goes. You want the background to drop down. Well, then you'll probably want a 1.4 if it's really critical to you. But I've actually found with a little bit of distance, like a 23 millimeter or especially 35, 50 and onwards, that as you get down to 2.0 and focus on the subject, if your background's a little bit far away, you'll be able to get that drop even at 2.0. One thing I would think about also with street photography, both for the practical side of carrying the thing as well as not being seen, if that's critical to you, the 1.4 lens is probably going to be bigger, so you'll want to think about that. Food for thought, and thank you, Kuhn, for asking that. All right, my first question out. Wow, I feel relaxed now. All right, we can do this. We only have, oh dear God, an hour and a half left. All right, people are coming in soon. Paul Corneliuson calls me a spanner and an anorak, and I love him for it. Be right back from a couple people like Eve. Still got my cow here, an original Andy. Paul. Hi, Paul. All right, we got a photography question, so I'll take that. Let me just make this a little bigger so you don't have to see my ugly mug so close to the camera, boys and girls. Oh, and why don't we do this? Hold on. Oh, yeah. Hello. Okay. Margot. Margot asks me, hi, Andy. Well, she says hi first, which is wonderful. Margot, I met you last summer on your photo tour of Bruges. I remember your name, Margot, and I remember you're a painter. As you say, I'm a painter, not so much a photographer, but the things I learned from your tour are immensely helpful in capturing reference photos for painting. Thanks. Thank you, Margot. I thought that was going to be a question. I'm so nervous I don't get to pre-read these things. Wow. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Well, let me tie that into some advice so that we make this meaningful and not just too soppy. My wife's giving me the look because I'm getting all choked up here. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're a painter and you're working on your photography, I hope you're enjoying it, even if it's just for your painting. I find it interesting to see that painters and photographers have such a similar, medium to play with between our two, sort of melding in the middle. If you're doing photography for reference, well, obviously you'll be glad if you can, shoot a little bit extra so you can just take that reference shot and not worry about any megapixel loss. So if you're keeping your photography casual because your painting is serious, just, enjoy that extra flexibility. I would say when you have time on your hands, still try and tighten it up so that, you're keeping at least a basic photography skill a little bit strong. And also remember, too, if you go too wide, well, then you're going to lose some of that detail, especially if you're just using like a pocket camera or even your smartphone. So play it wide, get in tight and proper if you have the time. And also I'd say if your color accuracy is not what you like it to be from your smartphone, you might want to play with the settings to get to the exposure, which on Android are fairly straightforward. After you tap the screen, you'll see usually a little sliding bar. And if you slide that, you'll see it go brighter and darker. And same actually on Apple iOS, where you tap, see the yellow screen, and then suddenly you can make things brighter or darker just by wiping up and down the screen. That'll give you a little more color accuracy, and it's also good to remember that you can always make a photo brighter and still retain more detail than when you make it darker. So always keep that in mind. The newer sensors are a little bit different. They're getting better at bright photos going dark. But fundamentally for colors, and like you can see, me playing with a lot of rich color in my own shooting, I like to shoot a little bit dark. So take a look at that. And if you get tired of always changing the app every shot so it goes darker, look into apps that are obviously camera apps that'll just set that. I'd say camera FLV5 on Android is pretty solid. And on iOS, you should look at Camera Plus for sure. So I hope that helps, even though I didn't get asked a question there. Just nice compliments about me running a photo tour. I'm going to blush on camera now. Oh, another nice comment, Eve. Thank you. I'll take it. Fine. I did several photo tours with Andy, and it is always fun and very interesting to find places. Thank you. All right, questions? Learning to look for... Margot, again. Margot, learning to look for tiny details and zooming in on those, and perhaps the best lesson. Also learning to use my pixel. Oh, there you go. I said it to her on the day. Zooming in just to be there. And little details. Got to add to that, guys. I'm religious about it on tour. You saw I skipped through some opening photos. And, yeah, it's good to go for the details. It also gives you a few more shots to not only have a couple more photos to show your friends without being boring at the end, but also to just further your creativity a little bit. And if nothing else, next to the photography, I found it's always been good towards, just soaking it all in as a person and getting the full experience. Like I said, the cameras are triggers, but yeah. Oh boy, still a bit nervous. All right, let's see. Do we have anything else? Here we go. Kuhn, you're welcome. Kuhn, you're welcome again. More questions are welcome, guys. I see there's only a few of you viewers, and that's totally fine. I wasn't expecting 5,000 people for this, trust me. But yeah, don't be shy with the questions, whether you have a smartphone and you just want to know something on, I don't know, what setting is what and what you can do. Maybe you want to know about just basic photo editing apps. Maybe you want to ask me about my photography. Some of that stuff I can go back to, like you saw. We can switch over to photos and I can babble away there. And, yeah, anything else you're thinking of? I kept it to the easy side, but folks, I've had like 2,000 guests and all in small groups where we get a lot of one-to-one time, and I've gotten to really listen to their photography, try out their gear, read up on it afterwards so I can know what I'm talking about on tour. Do not be shy. Do not be shy. If I don't know, I'll tell you I don't know. I won't try and BS you. And actually, if we're really tough for time to stretch this out, I can always go to a web browser and you can see how I look stuff up. All right, a couple of questions. Trish from Boston. It's Trish from Boston who was on tour when you met. Oh, sorry, with you when we met Susanna and toured her house. And Trish, that was beautiful. I totally mangled that, guys. These two fine guests on our tour while we were walking around Bruges on a photo tour one day. Well, we're walking a variety of a set track, if you will, for each of those tours. I vary streets and timing based on the guest pretty individually, part of why I keep small groups of 4. However, surprises always happen, and people in Bruges are surprisingly friendly if you think that, in this corner of things, they get a little bit conservative and dry. Because I've more than a few times had people invite us straight into their houses. And that day it was Susanna, who lived along one of the Reetjes, one of the canals. And she opened up her house when she saw I had 2 nice ladies with me on the tour, and showed us her really amazingly high-end, could be a gallery on its own art collection. I'm talking Hearsts and, all these names that I can't even begin to think of right now. And I was happy to throw out the last half hour of the tour we were doing. I'm sure we did 10 minutes afterwards just to have some fun and decompress. But that nice lady, Susanna, showed us around her house. And, we got to take photos. She just let us soak it all in and told us her story. Her husband was a surgeon here in Bruges, and together they collected so much art and such a tasteful, beautiful collection. Those are those moments that make me love everything in photography and certainly make me love doing everything as Photo Tour Bruges. So, wow. Thank you, Trish. Thanks for reminding me about that. Nice one. Cool. Yeah. Hope that serves as good promo for the Photo Tour Bruges experience. Also, my friends, don't forget that you can join me daily if you contact me privately through Messenger or even through my website, phototourbruges.com. I'll hook you up with the 20% discount just if you mention the live show. So there's the ad and all that kind of thing. We got more questions. Let me just drink a little beverage and hydrate a bit. Okay. Eve Bohart, who has been on the tour several times and enjoyed himself, like he said earlier in a comment. Thank you for that, Eve. August the 1st, I did a little shoot of a couple with my 50mm 1.8mm lens, but it seems I lost a lot of background even on f5. If this is the lens, is this the lens, or did I use the wrong lens or settings? Well, Eve, good question. Thank you. Thank you for bringing it up, too, on the technical. This is what I usually get to pump out daily as Photo Tour Bruges, until COVID came down. Well, Eve, and those of you trying to get those nice soft backgrounds on a 50mm 1.8, which is like a €100 lens, brand new. So if you're exploring your photography, whether it's on a crop camera or full frame, it's a cheap and cheerful buy, and you'll be able to explore, softening the depth of field through the low aperture number. And to answer your question, Eve, well, if you're using a 50mm 1.8, but at f5, and you didn't, it seems, lost a lot of background even at f5, well, that means that it was really soft, even though you were taking up that number as you should to increase the depth of field. Well, there's a couple factors at play. It could be where you were standing. If you have a certain distance from the subject, it's going to affect the depth of field already. If you're very, very close, it'll be easier to get a softer depth of field, so that might have been the situation. Maybe with the 50mm, presuming this is a full frame, you're doing like a head and shoulders shot, or maybe a couple shot head and shoulders. So if you were standing fairly close and not having much more in the background, it would be worth your while turning up that aperture number when you're standing that close to get more depth of field going on. And of course, you have to remember, if you want to increase your depth of field, even next to the aperture number, you're going to have to remember the distance of your subject, what's behind your subject. If it's something way in the background, then at f5, you should be able to drop it. You should be able to see that it's, you should be able to see that it's softer depth of field because the object is further in the distance from the couple in this case. Whereas if they're standing half a meter from a brick wall, at f5 you have a pretty good chance that there's still going to be a good amount of detail showing up on that background wall. And it won't be until you go up in numbers that, well, really you'll have what you have. And you got, yep, the 5D Mark III full frame. And yeah, so try that out. Obviously, on a full frame, it will be different than on a crop camera. They affect the depth of field also with the sensor size and all that stuff. But in a basic way, I would next time take a look at where you're standing and also think about the distance of your background object behind the couple. I would also say, and this is not to say that one's better than the other, but one little advantage I find with mirrorless cameras is that I get previews directly through the electronic viewfinder for my depth of field. I'm not sure if the Canon 5D, if you used live view, if you would see that change in depth of field. I would like to think you would. And also you can remember to program one of your buttons so that it does a preview of the depth of field, like a lot of full frame, well, a lot of DSLRs do. And try that out a little bit. It's always, I find with especially the technical things in photography, it can be a lot of experimentation and just doing it over and over and over again. You know, the biggest leaps in my photography, if you got the slideshow at the beginning, gang, and if not, please check it out on the replay, is that it's all a process and it's all development. And the more often you do it, the better it gets. You know, even when I'm not shooting as a photographer, whether I'm doing the client work or collecting work to show you as Photo Tour Brugge, just the fact that I get to talk in this kind of language and keep photography at the front of my mind most years is, well, yeah, it keeps all those numbers and settings and things to consider fresher in mind. And I find if you really want to nail it down, especially if you're doing portrait photography where you don't want to keep the client waiting as you go through 5 apertures and testing, moving them around and all that stuff, or at least more than you need to. Well, practice makes perfect. And that's also why, as much as possible, you got to get out there and do your shooting. And obviously, you know, the world is going to find, at the very minimum, some sort of middle ground to what we're doing. I mean, if I'm allowed to run photo tours, even up to a group of 10 if I want to, according to the rules here in Bruges, as long as we distance and all wear masks, well, then I think you can get out there for your photos, whether you're Eve or Margot or anyone or me even. You know, it's just regular practice. So keep that up and hope that helps and filled some time, I guess, talking about photography like a nerd. Well, the viewer numbers fluctuate, but we have a couple of you, so thank you all of you so far for tuning in. Margot, I saw another question from you. Okay, for a non-photographer, what is the real difference between shooting in RAW or JPEG? Excellent question, and not just for the basic photographer. Even at the top end of this, we sometimes get into this discussion on the willy-nilly. Now, Margot, at the end of the day, a JPEG is the file that most cameras deliver if they're not into the serious end of thing offering RAW. You can sometimes change a couple of settings into TIFF or whatever, but JPEG is going to be a popular format that still offers a little bit of flexibility in the editing, but basically what you see is what you get. It gets processed in camera. You won't be able to change as much afterwards as far as the flexibility of RAW, like I'll talk about in a second. And, well, it has its advantages and disadvantages for some. Mainly, the advantages for a lot of JPEG shooters is that it's quick and easy, so you don't have to go process a RAW and do the work involved just in getting the photo to what you see. You let the camera make the decision, or you get to know how to program the camera a little more towards what you want. And then, you know, you have the disadvantages of losing a little bit of flexibility. So if it's way too bright or way too dark, or even just a little bit too bright, like I talked about earlier about shooting dark to pull it up, the JPEG will be more limited than a RAW. And that brings it into the RAW a little more cleanly, because the RAW is, put simply, 3 times the file size, roughly speaking, for 3 times the data. You have more information in that file as a RAW compared to a JPEG than you do normally with a JPEG. You have a lot more information about what's in the highlights, what's in the shadows. You'll be able to pull a couple of strong stops, which are our measures of light and other settings in photography. So you'll be able to do a lot more flexibility with brighter and darker. You'll also be able to, you won't have a bigger print size, even though it's a bigger file, because it's just a deeper file. So next to that, having the flexibility on highlights, shadows, contrast, that side of things, you'll also notice with the colors, you'll be able to have a lot more flexibility in changing the white balance or the tint. One of those two factors, the warmth, some people call it, well, you'll be able to change that without destroying or really messing with any of the pixels. I'd say as a non-photographer, you're probably going to be happy with JPEG a lot of the time. I would get to know the camera a little bit more as far as what it can do in JPEG. And I'd also get to know the HDR setting on your camera if it's on offer. The HDR is kind of like a RAW where you get more information because it takes a bright, middle, and dark photo all at once, or at least click, 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 and then puts them together in camera so you get a lot of the highlights, a lot of the dark areas, and a lot of what's in between. If you set it right also, it should look fairly natural. It's a bit of a science, and I'd personally recommend for a casual photographer one of the Sony RX10 or 100 models because they have that feature, and Sony's a very solid compact brand. And even on your smartphone, you can download HDR apps so you can get that flexibility. Although I do find that smartphones still have a little bit of a way to go towards making HDRs that I'm happy with. I gotta say, since you're a painter, you'll want to be careful, and again, probably just not to put you off RAW in the very least. Obviously, feel free to ask more about that. But I think you're probably going to be most happy with JPEG just because of the easy nature to work with it and how it still has a little bit of flexibility when you need it, especially the newer cameras. I hope that helps. Do we have any more questions? We have, okay, Andy, thanks, mate. So that's from Eve. Thank you, and you are welcome, Eve. I'm just going to take a look if I missed anything. Nope. Looks like only a few of you are here. Well, I'm happy to talk to myself for a while, guys. Don't you go away. Please don't be shy with those questions. Come on, I know it's the first one, but hit me. See what we can see here. Do I have to flip through a few more photos? Do I have to drag the wife on screen? What do I got to do here? Please, I want to be an influencer. Make me famous by asking me questions. No, that is not the mindset, guys. You know, some of you might be asking, why is Andy doing this? Why is he embarrassing himself on camera when he's really good at embarrassing himself in private? Well, frankly, folks, I miss taking people around as Photo Tour Brugge and doing my thing as Photo Tour Brugge. That isn't a plug or anything. It's just what I've been doing for the last 8 years as part of my journey and travels in photography. And it's been maybe one of the biggest joys and satisfaction of the job has just been helping people with their photography. You know, we talk about a few things on the tour as we go along. It isn't photo for 2 hours straight. We'll get a little bit into the local history. I'm no history guide, but I know a couple things. We'll definitely get into the modern side of Bruges because that's where I know a little more profoundly and assuredly what's going on. And yeah, I mean, just whether you're helping people with their photography or talking to them about life and maybe somehow randomly giving them a little piece of the puzzle they need on holiday or just traveling around their own city. That's real satisfying to me. You know, it's always my 2 cents, and what do I know? I'm an idiot, so there's that. Oh, a question came in, but I'm going to get through my monologue first. This is deep, guys. Thank you, Simon. That'll cut this short. Yeah, guys and gals, I really enjoy doing the educating as Photo Tour Bruges. I guess this is also a good point before I take Simon's question, with pleasure, that I mentioned that this is the first episode I've done this. But it's not the last. I'm going to maybe do it over September a couple more times. In fact, I'm definitely going to do it once more over September for a photo feedback session. But these online chit-chats are here to stay, whether they're on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram Live, Twitch. I don't know. I'm discovering all these social media channels. It's what I do, and I like to do it more in the real world, one-on-one, with especially the gorgeous city of Bruges. But it looks like every second week, maybe on a Sunday, maybe on a Wednesday. Why don't you let me know in the comments if Sunday or Wednesday is a better day for you to watch something like this. I'm going to be sharing out my photo thoughts. It's not going to be as loose and open where it's just anything. I'm going to pick a topic in photography and we're going to talk about it. I'll do a little research and show off some stuff and maybe a couple of photos of mine. And then we're going to open it up to group discussion. I guess also to get a little bit of plugging out of the way, I'm also soon going to be offering private photo feedback sessions. So if you're interested on improving your photography after our time together, or maybe just having known each other and knowing that apparently I know what I'm talking about in my photography, you'll be able to hire me out for a very modest rate so we can have a Skype, Zoom, or Facebook live chat or whatever it takes so that I can get online with you and be able to help you with your photography for coming times. This isn't because I'm bailing on Photo Tour Bruges at all. In fact, these were plans that I sort of had in the near future for when we hit 10 years of doing Photo Tour Bruges, and I can call it a milestone to release all this. But yeah, photo feedback sessions are available. I'm going to be offering more and more of them, but I'm also going to be doing 2 free shows a month. One on the topic in photography that we throw open to the group, and one on your photo feedback, which means that you'll be able to post photos, send me photos, and I'll be giving you absolutely free, honest, and maybe even with a sense of humor, advice and feedback on your photos. Some of you even know I've done it before. There are a couple videos online, and I'll be sharing them over coming times. Okay, that's a little bit of a plug as well as what I'm up to in photography. Simon, you waited long enough for your photo to be answered. What can I do for you, man? Simon, another past guest on the tour. Thank you for joining, and thank you for joining today. Same to all of you 15 folks. Hi, Andy. How do you deal with 500 plus photos after a holiday? Oh, what a pertinent question to us all, huh? What's your workflow for quickly getting down to a more manageable selection? Very, very good question, Simon, because I'm sure a lot of us know this feeling. I think when you get really far ahead in your photography, and especially if you have one of those methodical brains that can do logic and common sense and structure and, all that sort of thing that gives you a nice, easy photo library, this is going to be an easy thing overall. But for the other 90% of us humans who have ADHD or whatever else, it can be a little tricky when you come back from holiday. Now, this also applies to the casual end of us as photographers because we all love to take photos on holiday. And it's really nice to come back with some great photos of family, friends, and good times. How about I show you a little bit what I do, Simon, by clicking over to my viewing program, turning that off, getting out of there and getting into Lightroom. And you will all excuse the mess, of course, but let's take my trip to Paris in 2016. Now, oops, there we go. Okay, now that is not Paris. That's the view out my window of a very terrible photo. As we go and look into all these photos, how many have we got here? Well, folks, we have... This was being conservative on a 1-week holiday of spending time with Mrs. Andy and just taking photos on the loose with 2 cameras. We have 2,327 photos. Rock and roll, huh? It's not just a few. I'm only in Paris for that one visit. Mrs. Andy and I have been there multiple times before, but we don't know when the next one is. And we've got to make sense of all this. So what do I do to make sense of it? I open up a fine program like Lightroom, or, well, you can even get Adobe Camera Raw for free if you don't want to go to subscription software. Same goes for, of course, my brain is going to blank out here, of course, my brain's going to blank out here. Simon, private message me and I'll give you a couple of names. But there is software like On One that helps you organize your library as a photographer, from importing them to putting tags and all that sort of thing. But in the basic way of using Lightroom as a program to import and manage my photos in the library module you see here, I take all those photos, and then what I do is when I get back, let's just start in Paris herself, I hope you can see this. See what I'm circling with the mouse, that little flag? That is from flagging the photo. If I'm in Lightroom, I can just press P to pick that photo and put a flag. If I change my mind, I can press U to remove the flag. And if it's a reject, failed photo, I press N. Whoops, no, I don't. Jeez. I press X, and then it is a rejected photo. Excuse me there, folks. Now, it's a little bit boring, but essentially using the arrow keys and those 3 letters, usually on pick, I go through for a first pass, and I find a photo I like. I press P. That last one was pretty good too. I press P, and then I move away from those personal photos, go to flagged after I've gone through everything. And look at that, folks. Those nearly 2,400 photos have become, well, it was a good holiday and a good haul for photos because it's Paris. 641 with a few doubles and options and all that sort of thing. As you can see, after I've flagged them, I start editing up or just feeling them out in one way or another. This one I liked quite a lot, so I put 5 stars onto it, which is just pressing the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for as many stars as I want. And if it's a really special one, I might use 6, 7, 8, or 9 to give it a color code like you can see. Red or dead for this one, and then you can see I have a very favorite, if you will. And I can even use that color coding towards organizing those photos. After that, in a program like Lightroom, I turn off the flags when I go through my filters and attributes up here. And then I turn on the X's. Oh, I've already killed all those photos. Those have been deleted. And over time, I'm going to make sure to go back to those regular photos as well as filter them all out over time properly. So basically, it's putting in the effort and, just going through them. What I do afterwards, when I've gone through all these and end up with, even 300 odd favorites, I usually make a best of folder, and then I can see them all a little more cleanly without having to do stuff. And then from there, usually it's color coding and doing sometimes extra edits and all that sort of thing. You can see I was pleased with this one of this fine boulangerie. So I put 5 stars. I put it to label 6. Set label as red. And then I have that favorite as a very favorite. So a good thing to do, and part of why I like software to assist me beyond just editing the photo. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities here. Don't forget also from artificial intelligence that we're going to have, yes, Capture One. Sorry, I see that on the side. There's my ADD. Whoops. Here, why don't we turn that off? Excuse me a second, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, enjoying the free show? Yeah, boys and girls, what I would say for this one is this is where software can help you out. And for future, you also have artificial intelligence that's going to be able to go through your photos, not only to tag them and put relevant things. Already in Lightroom, you can use face detect, which is a little freaky, to find faces of those of you, those you love and so forth. So software is on the way, and well, there are articles and studies and software and all that sort of thing up about photos that are picked out for you as favorites. Google Photos does that already if you have that installed. It'll show one every now and then saying, do you like this one especially? So yeah, you go through it. Also, you think about the technology that you can access. Again, it'll come down to a little bit of work of learning that program and software and all that. I would also add that while I'm on holiday, I didn't do it so much in Paris, but I usually do a few deletes at the end of the day after shooting. or doing holiday. That way I'm not unloading a ton onto my hard drive that I have to go through. I mean, you'll see a fail on that little screen no matter what. And if you're using a mirrorless camera, you'll be able to even hold it up to the eye and see everything there. So, yeah. That helps. And Capture One, I believe, let me double check here, kids. Capture One is an alternative to Lightroom, and I think is well worthy. I haven't used it much myself, but I believe, let's explore the features. Tell you what, this is how I do my study. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm opening a web browser that you should be able to see in a second. Whee, look at that. Copying in the link. I wanted to know about Capture One, so I Googled it. I saw the website, and then I luckily see Explore Features. If I want to know a little more about the software, I usually go to an article. But with these websites, they're going to be pushing the big stuff forward first and fast. A review is going to be a little more detailed and nuanced, and especially on a live show, you're going to be reading a lot of stuff. Speed up your editing. No, I could be totally wrong, guys. I still have to get into Capture One, but I don't think it does photo organization in the same way. I'm pretty sure you can use Camera Raw. Well, I know you can use Camera Raw from Adobe for free. Do some basic edits and exports there. And you can organize your folders pretty easily that way, too. I'm just taking a look at products and plans. If I remember right, there was something about... No, I'm not. I'm going to talk lies if I continue, so I'm going to scoot away from that. We're going to turn off the old web browser. Hey, hello again. And yeah, Capture One would be something that you could use for editing, certainly, but I'm not sure you'll be able to use it for the photo library side of things like Lightroom. I do have to say there is, I can't believe I can't remember the software. I'm so embarrassed, guys. But, there is some software that will definitely do this kind of thing for free. I know, in fact, for 100% free, an open source project is called Darktable. And you might want to look at that because that's a nice Lightroom alternative that you can use towards editing your photos, organizing them, that side of things. Yeah, Simon, you're welcome. And indeed, I guess there's no substitute for going through the pictures and flagging. Yeah, it's doing the hard work. It's what it is at the end of the day. Look forward to artificial intelligence pushing this forward. Okay, any more questions? Oh, I guess not. Careful, guys. We have 2 full hours here. Do I have to show more photos? Is it that bad? Well, okay. We were in Paris. Let's go back. There. Let me just look through real quick. In fact, this is the benefit of going through your photos and picking out a few favorites with some 5 stars. I know 5 stars should theoretically be for the very best, but I actually do them backwards for some reason. I guess it's my ADHD and a bit of dyslexia thrown in. I don't know. All right, boys and girls, since you're not asking me enough questions, I'm going to have to wing it for a little bit, but I am going to throw some love at Simon for that. Thanks and so forth. Wow, social media. Yeah, why don't we go through a few photos? I could show you little pieces of Paris. I mean, this is how unedited, except for going through all the crap, I see this beautiful city on the last visit with Mrs. Andy in 2016. Hello, Mrs. Andy. She's smiling because I mentioned Paris. I'm looking all over. I actually enjoy photography on holiday most because I basically have no objective other than, is that interesting? You can see signs, graffiti, little locks like Paris is well known for. All these little details are certainly pieces that I'm thinking of and trying to put together. It's so easy to go for this stuff. You're not really bothering anyone, which being on holiday from people, either as a tour guide, instructor, or a portrait photographer is kind of nice. The statue looks like a human, but he's not going to ask me questions and all that sort of thing. So when I'm out and about on holiday, a lot of street and a lot of details come in. If those people had turned around and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I would have smiled and said, "I've taken a je prends une photo." Luckily, I speak French. So, yeah, that's simple. Graffiti, random stuff, boring stuff, or maybe interesting. I mean, you got to experiment with it. You get some cool stuff too if you do carry those wider angle, excuse me, those wider aperture lenses. That's the Fujifilm 14mm f2.8 at 2.8. Going back to Eve's question and to remind you about depth of field, I'm using a wide angle lens, but I'm extremely close to my subject. And I'm at 2.8 with a bit of distance away from the subject to the background. So very, very easy to get that soft background. And if I was like Eve and trying to get more background, well, I'd either have to step back, zoom in, or crop afterwards with fixed lens and turn up my aperture number. And little details. J'existe, I exist. Nice little things to look out for on holiday. The wife seems happy that I come home with these photos too because she gets her souvenirs. We actually take an instant film camera on holidays too as I'm looking at my wife, and that's kind of nice because it is fun for her and fun for me. We have this non-serious photography thing to play with and do our thing. So that's rather fun. Oh, look at you. 12 still watching. I guess this might be interesting. Yeah, back in Paris and talking about some of the photos. Social stuff that has always come to mind always catches my eye, like I talked about earlier. More hearts, more extras. This is definitely a folder I could go through a little more. Yeah, you can see I'm just looking out for things. I have some graffiti of some eyes and zide. So I see a background camera. I work that into the story and especially make sure it's pointing at those eyes. You can see also, because I was standing close to the subject and zooming in a little bit, I get a softer background, so I'm going to have to turn that up to f7.1 to get a little more depth of field. Otherwise, I won't make out that background camera shape. And Paris, Paris in all its beauty. It might not look obvious, but I love cities. I come from a city, and it's fun to play in a city. It's got its own hard and harsh beauty, if you will. Paris by night is sheer delight. Why do we hide the info on all those? Oh, look at that. Here's something I can talk about if there are no questions, the before and after photo. We want to talk about editing photos. Oh, whoops, look, you can't see my photos. Thank you, Simon. Haha, can you see I'm a beginner at this? Well, I guess you didn't see my terrible photos of Paris then. All right, look, we are back. There's some Paris. Let me get back to Lightroom. Thank you. Yeah, well, I could zip over those photos again. There you go. There's some street signs, some graffiti, some bits and pieces, so forth, so on. But I don't want to bore you too much. The people who if they had yelled, I would have said, "Je prends photo," and bits and pieces of Paris. Since we wanted to keep this not too repetitive and boring, I'm just going to show you that urban site that I found quite charming. And remind you that even on rough days, everything can have its own beauty one way or another. My wife found some more questions. What's going on here? Okay. Well, let's get back to before and after for when I don't have any questions. Let me just zip over. We'll go to full screen, whether you want it or not. Haha, it's my show. What you gonna do? Whoa! Ladies and gentlemen, do you like this elegant television visual background I made? Wife, please ask some questions. Okay. Sorry, just checking that everything's working.
They're on their different posts, I think.
Okay. Well, Chris asks, what do you think of the Fuji instant cameras, mate? We were thinking about having a couple for guests to use at our wedding next year. Really good question, Chris. I love Fujifilm instant cameras. And that's not because I have friends at Fujifilm Belgium. Trust me, they do not love me enough to sponsor me. They give me a little bit of a discount on my gear every now and then, but that's only because they like my photos. Want to make that clear for disclaimer that I have a relationship, but it's not a formal one in any way with obligation. Dude, I love instant film. In fact, everybody waits for 10 seconds. I'm going to be You should all be able to hear me again. My microphone says yes, or at least my screen for my microphone does. Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, some of the instant film that I love. This is a Instax film, in case you're wondering what I'm talking about. This is an Instax Mini, this is an Instax Wide, and this, with my tour logo, is an Instax Square. So we have three formats for these. They're like the old Polaroid film dealios, where you can have it printed on real paper. It's fun. I like them. I think if we're talking about personally, I think they're just fun to sort of let go of as a serious photographer by giving up all my settings and high-end gear so that I can just play with something like this. Certainly triggers some nostalgia there. And as far as what you can do with them, well, there's the print instantly, and then there's the squares as well as the minis that have both instant print as well as digital print options, which means essentially you have a digital film camera. Sorry guys, I'm a little nervous. A digital camera with the option to print directly in the Square Mini format. Now, as far as getting them for guests for your photography work, Chris, I'm just going to look at your question again because I had to get up and throw the groove around. We are having a couple of guests to use at our wedding next year. For a wedding, I'd highly recommend them. I'm not going to lie, and this is probably part of why Fujifilm won't sponsor me full-time. Haha. They aren't the cheapest format out there, so you'll have to consider that if you're going to be using them in great quantities. You say you're thinking about having a couple for guests to use at our wedding next year. Well, when my good friend Ian Van Landoet and Miss Britt Marie got married, we were lucky enough to be able to hook them up with the guys at Fujifilm Belgium to be able to borrow a bunch of Instax cameras, and they just paid the film. It meant that they had all sorts of, fun with just these instant pick up and go cameras. People were able to share the prints around, and it was a big hit. I think it's a really fun social thing. I also got to add that you can print from a printer any photo you like in the Instax format. They do the Instax printers. So you might want to look for that because like Ian and Britt Marie, they printed the Instax Minis multiple times over of a photo with them and then put it as part of the gift bag so their friends would have a little Instax of them cuddling in love. So for me, I think a big hit. As a photographer, I enjoy using them on client jobs. When I do my portrait photography, I bring along an Instax and include it as part of the price so that they can have some photos directly as well as just kind of step away from the big gear, both for them and for me. And highly endorsed. Super awesome. Instaxes are fun. Super fun. Okay, we have more questions. I can't believe we have questions. Thank you so much for your questions, everybody. Barbara, hello. Hi, Andy from Colorado, USA. Question re, the last photo on the scooter. The scooter is level, but the horizon is not. Is that something you don't worry about? Well, let's take a look at the photo and find out, Barbara. It's one of my older photos. Let's see. I will just go. We'll come back to Paris if no one has any more questions. Hopefully you have more questions. Barbara, you asked if the horizon is bothering me if the scooter is level. Let's take a little look. There she is. All right. Indeed, yeah, it's off center. Well, when I took that one, Barbara, I was hanging from the back of a scooter myself for dear life with Nicholas. And that was good fun. And as far as it bothering me, well, I do have my nerdy side where I like everything straight and correct, especially when I get into my architecture and landscape work. This kind of shot, I'm actually really quite happy to let it go. Oh, whoops, you guys can't see it, can you? Ha ha ha. I am so new to this. Yes, okay, now you should be able to see that. Well, everybody, indeed the horizon is not level, even though the scooter is. I might have actually played with this in post-production in the sense of playing with the crop and rotating it a bit. I think for me, it doesn't really bother me. If it bothered me, it wouldn't be in something I'd show that publicly at this point in my photo development. But also, it's part of that looseness that I think you got to give and take a little bit in your photography. When I look at this one, I think of the guy on the scooter with the yellow. I think about him being some sort of security dude. He's actually one of the coordinators as far as making sure no one goes off course. And obviously the whole retro vibe that I also enhanced through the edit. The line being straight on a landscape that's been still and set up on a tripod, yeah, I think that matters. On this one, I wanted him to be level because I thought he was the central object. And then the background, I'm happy to give and take a little bit. Especially the way it's leaning forward, it kind of builds up momentum if you're looking at the frame left to right, and then goes right through his mouth before rising up at the end of the frame. And I'm not saying I've done that right or anything, but if it's done right, it can be an extra little complementary effect to the creativity you're trying to push forward in your photo. So how about that? Why not leave it on that so that you can stare at that instead of my ugly mug full screen? Boys and girls, as I do that, why don't I do this where you can just kind of see some of the photos over? There you go. There's some of the early work. If you came in late, well, we went through some of my history in photography. I won't recap the whole thing, but I will allow it to play while I look around for a few questions. Hope that helped, by the way, Barbara. Yeah, the horizon, if I'm doing a landscape shot or an architecture piece, it's got to be level unless I'm really doing it for a reason. In street and action shots, I'm happy to give and take a little more. The subject on the scooter was the main story, so that's the one I'm going to keep straight and a little more focused. All right. Bobby. Hey, Bobby, I remember you from our tour. Hi, Andy. What's your take on the Olympus system? That would be the Micro Four Thirds side of photography. Excellent question, Bobby. Thank you. Wow, love how we're not holding back here, guys. Good work. All right. Well, on the whole Olympus system, I've got to remember to, excuse me, do that so you can see photos. Yeah, Bobby, on the Olympus system, he says tapping the keyboard so you can see photos every few seconds. I'm a pretty big fan. I didn't invest in this system myself. For those of you who don't know Olympus, as far as the cameras we're most likely talking about, those are Micro Four Third censored cameras, which is about half the size of your typical crop camera, APS-C censored camera. It's I suppose 30% or 33% of a full frame. So that's that. And as some of you know, and maybe if you don't, you will now, the bigger the sensor, it's got its benefit in some points. Now, a smartphone sensor is only about that big, a Micro Four Thirds sensor about that big, and a full frame sensor about that big. So we're not talking huge divides here. And even on a smartphone, like you see nowadays, you get a lot of good results. And when it comes to the Micro Four Thirds system, especially by Olympus, I didn't invest in it myself. I wanted a little bit of a bigger sensor, especially for the flexibility with dynamic range within a single RAW, like we talked about earlier, with being able to flex that RAW. The bigger sensor is going to make a difference at that point, and part of why my second system is actually my full frame camera. But the Olympus system is no slouch. I would also add with the Olympus system, they're really nice cameras overall. And if dynamic range isn't your most important thing, I think already something to look at. And I'm certainly not saying bad things about the dynamic range. It's just to my tastes and sometimes the flexibility I need. But one of the things I really do like while we're on dynamic range for Olympus is the fact that you can very easily do an HDR shot. And that means that, as we talked about earlier, you take a series of photos very quickly, and then you put them together either in camera or in the software afterwards. Well, I find that Olympus being very developed and quick access towards HDR so that you can shoot off 3-5 RAWs. So you get the full dynamic range to process. And even within that one RAW, especially as and when they update their technology and sensors, you get still plenty to work with within one. Well, I like them. I also like that it's a micro four thirds system, so I don't just get stuck with Olympus lenses, or limited to Olympus lenses, I should say. With micro four thirds, you can go to Panasonic lenses. You can also much more easily buy third party lenses because micro four thirds is one of the open formats compared to Nikon, Canon, Sony, who hold their their lens mount a little more close to the lawyers. And with Olympus overall, as far as the handling and feel, that's actually where I'm their biggest fan because they like the Fujifilm system I've invested in. They really know how to do a really nice styling and molding to the features and what I'd be, wanting on access at hand. I also like with just like Fujifilm, they're not shy to have a really retro feel to their cameras. The consumer cameras, I think, say it much more loudly on the retro side than their OMDs, for example. But even then, the OMD has a little more retro feel to it, which is something I've always liked out of my camera system. It is just the aesthetics, of course, but for me, it's a nice feature. And, beyond aesthetics, I like where Olympus has a lot of buttons and where they're placed. And like a lot of camera systems, you can reprogram buttons that aren't in the places you want, as far as, I want that button to do that. So Olympus, good overall. One thing I'd say, just to add in for the advanced side of things, is that they don't seem to be progressing as a camera company too much right now. They've announced, I believe, that they're out of the photography game as far as making cameras and lenses. I'm not sure if I'm talking accurately there. There's a lot of stage fright pressure in my mind right now, even an hour and 25 into talking about this, ladies and gentlemen. But I do believe that I'm not talking crazy saying that Olympus isn't going to be doing so much for building cameras. Although I am pretty sure within that vague memory of the news that I read that they will be quite possibly licensing out the brand to other manufacturers if they do want to continue under Olympus. So that's my take on Olympus. Real nice in the hand and real nice in the features and options. And a little smaller sensor than I'd like for my needs, especially when we get to low light photography. But definite pluses, and actually, to end on a plus, really, 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 really great stabilization. When they can do 2-3 second handheld shots and that stabilizes in camera, that's definitely something that I think stands out. And for the sensor size, usually smaller sensor means quicker autofocus. So for street photography, really fun. Hope that helped, Bobby, and I guess it killed a little time. I'm just looking over at the wife because I want to see if there's any more questions. Oh, I'm not spinning photos around, am I? Oh, Andy, maybe you mentioned it earlier, but what camera do you use these days? Thank you, Simon, for that question. And the wife for blocking the camera. Right on. It's all good. That's part of the lo-fi sound that we have going here, ladies and gentlemen, including me forgetting to spin the photos around. Ladies and gents, and Simon specifically, what cameras am I using these days? Well, mate, I am primarily using Fujifilm, as I mentioned a couple times, as a favored system. I like the smaller side of cameras as I move around just day to day. So I find it's really well developed on the Fujifilm side of things. Also, at this point, I have quite a few lenses from them, so I'm leaning into them quite heavily. In fact, one of my main lenses for Fujifilm, the 10 to 24 millimeter, took a big fall during the lockdown while I was taking photos. It wasn't even during a busy moment. I was meeting the wife and going for a wander and spun it right off the clip. But yeah, I replaced that lens, even though I have other lenses and finances to think about in the other system I'll talk about in a second. So mostly Fujifilm day to day for my full frame needs, and also so I can hook up some of my really high-end glass that isn't available on Fujifilm. I use my Nikon. Currently I'm at a Nikon D800 full frame camera. It's about 6 years old, so it's getting a little long in the tooth. And we were hoping to replace that this fine year of 2020 until 2020 was not so fine a year. Right, dear? Whoa, whoa! This year's been a bit of a turd, everybody. Yeah. Anyways, I've been holding out with the Nikon D800 just fine for the last 6 years, and currently you should be seeing some more photos of me in India. I've been a long-time Nikon user. It was the camera that I picked up that ended up paying me from the second roll. And while I've been traveling around, I've always been happy with the Nikon brand as my primary or secondary system. I have to say, over the recent times, as my D800 starts to age out, and I can consider looking at a new body, maybe in the next couple of years, if you share all this with your friends and we get to do this a little more often and I get a little more work online while the tours recover. Well, ladies and germs, I'll be looking at a new Nikon, but it'll probably be on the mirrorless side of things because I like mirrorless. But actually, having said that, I might just go for a D850 because basically that is the last DSLR I think most of us are going to need, with tons of megapixels, super fast autofocus, and all those good things. One thing I consider with my photography, and if you're busy with yours, you please do consider it too. Durability is really not to be underrated. Part of why I like the Fujifilm system, even though I broke some recently, is that it can take a good few knocks and hits, especially the high-end models like the XT2 and the D800 and 850 and various ones in that pro range. Whether it's Canon, Fujifilm, Nikon, Sony, whatever. Once you start getting to the pro league of pricing, you start getting to the pro league of durability. So it's more of an investment, but when you run around like a madman like I do, I find it's worth just going that extra model up if you have the financing available, which we don't this year, so I'm sticking with my D800 and my Fujifilm. Oh, and also just to show it as a prop on one of the few things I have on the desk right here and now, I recently got a new smartphone because there was a promo going on, and I was changing my monthly abonnement. So I got a 4-lensed Samsung S21, I believe it is, and that has a wide angle built in, it has a macro lens built in, and it has a fine standard zoom lens built in, as well as a proximity sensor. So frankly, I'm not afraid to use this thing, especially since I have more time away from tours and the outside life, I'm doing more stuff online to promote my work. Promote my work as a photographer without burping too much, like a real pro. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to make this show boring, so if you're here for boring, please leave. Okay, does my wife have any more questions lined up over there? It does not seem so. I'm looking over here and I don't see anything. I'm going to just skip over to my tablet in case I'm missing something on my side. Probably am. I mean, I forget to rotate the photos even. Here, why don't we go back to Lightroom and you can see a little more of what I do or have done over past. The Uco in Brugge, for you Bruges people who missed it. My father-in-law worked there. Let's see. Okay. No more questions. No more questions? Let's see. Somebody's spamming me. Oh, that means I'm a little successful. Right on. No, Mia's photo tour Bruges, but no questions. Ladies and gentlemen, maybe we won't do 2 hours in future. I was all excited and thought I'd take a chance. Let's see. Any questions? Come on, guys, ask me some questions. We got another half hour. Otherwise, I'll run out of things to say. The best I got is that I'm being spammed slightly over the event. You got to love when you get comments like, look, event, can wait. Good event. Nice event. Can wait. Yeah. That's the kind of comments I want to hear when I'm doing the first live cast ever and trying to make it interesting. Woohoo! All right, boys and girls, what do we got? I'm looking around. You're welcome, Simon. It was good to see you in the name and little profile shot there, too. I guess we can talk about this. It's about time for me to mention business overall. Simon says, look, Simon is kind enough to leave after his thanks with hope things look up as soon with Oh, Jesus, I'm just failing here, friends. Let's try that again. Hope things look up soon with your visitor numbers in Bruges, and hopefully see you soon. Cheers. Simon is, of course, talking about the fact that, like on this photo that you're looking in the background, Bruges is not so busy this year because of, well, the whole health scare and then economic fallout and continuing health scare and economic fallout that is going around thanks to COVID or whatever you want to call it. I do also hope that there are guests back soon because I miss doing my tours. I have to say though, folks, it is overdue for me to do more stuff online like this little program that we're doing right here, right now. I will also once again please remind you, if you don't mind, to like, share, subscribe to my Andy McSweeney photography page, like you can see up in the corner. Ooh, can I do it through here? Yeah, up in the corner of the screen you see at Andy McPhoto and at Photo Tour Bruges. Those are my main two channels on social media, from Facebook to Instagram to whatnot. Twitter is also a channel as part of the whatnot that you can feel free to subscribe to. And also, do remember that we're going to be doing this show twice a month. Next one is in 2 weeks. Why don't we call it I'll think about it, but I'm going to say a Sunday tentatively. We're going to do this again, where you can send in your photos, and I'm going to give you free feedback about your photography. I won't be talking as long about mine either, and I guess we'll judge up if we're going to do an hour or two. Maybe we can list it as an hour, and if it gets busy, we'll just extend it, because I don't think Facebook cuts me off at 10 o'clock on the dot. My wife's looking at me like we have a question, so we'll get to that shortly. But I will just... Oh, 2 questions. Wow. Ooh, 2 questions. Yeah, ladies and germs. It has been a bit of a brutal year this year as Photo Tour Bruges, but I got to say I am happy to be doing these online shows. It's all very surreal and new to me, but it seems to be enjoyable since I haven't gone, okay, that's enough, bye-bye, go away. So, yeah, we're stuck with this for a while all around, and please do feel free to check this out. If you want, also send me an email to info@andymcsweeney.com, and I'll put you on the mailing list so you can get more details. And just before I get to those last 2 questions that might actually end up rounding out the hour, who knows, I can babble photography all day. I just want to remind you all that I will be starting up on the private photo feedback side of things, doing availability for feedback on your photos. I haven't worked out the marketing, but that's essentially it. We'll be able to hook up on Skype, Zoom, or even Facebook Messenger, whatnot, so that I can take a look at some photos you sent over. We can share screens, and I can look at your photos, you can look at mine, and then I'll be there to give you some feedback and some honest thoughts on your photography. So check all that out, as well as the soon-to-be redesigned andymcsweeney.com for details. I'd say social media these days is the best way to keep up. So Andy McSweeney Photography over here on Facebook, Instagram, Andy McSweeney Photography, and same goes as Photo Tour Bruges, of course, because I got so many photos, I got to post them, especially now that I have more time online. Questions, please, he says, after throwing out some promo and quickly grabbing some tea.
Chris and Bobby. Here's Chris for the wedding, and then there's Bobby.
Okay. I believe I already read these. Another wedding question. Go right ahead, Chris. You did it already. Excellent. Okay. Let's see. Chris asks me again. Hey, we all there? Hi. Hi, how you doing? Okay, Chris asks me, our photographer has a Nikon D800. As you said, it's not the most modern of bodies, and our wedding venue is quite dark. Will the D800 cope okay with that? Specific question on a camera I use. Wow. Doesn't this feedback feel organic, fun, and groovy? Chris, thanks for your question. Well, the D800 is a powerful beast indeed. It is a little lower and older on the scale of cameras, so you won't get the latest low light focusing. Personally, I would... Oh, excuse me, that's the T. I would maybe mention to your wedding photographer that a flash would be to their benefit. Otherwise, you can turn up the ISO, but specifically for that camera and even for a full frame, I would not, unless it's a really magic photo, and maybe turn it into black and white afterwards. go above ISO 3200 unless you want to get a really speckly photo. Now, obviously, if it's the first dance and the flash isn't an option, you do what you got to do. Certainly, faster lenses will be to the photographer's benefit with the D800 because with me saying faster lens, I mean it can open up wider in aperture so more light can come in. And that means they might not have to push the ISO or still have that decent ISO range to work with as they go to a low numbered aperture. And I'd say also for the low light darkness, well, the big benefit of the flash is that at least on my SB800, it's got that red light that's a crosshairs that projects itself before it takes the photo or it flashes for the photo. And that way you get more accurate autofocus. So the flash can be worth it just for that. What I would do is also flash the ceiling or use a dispersing flash in one way or another, probably with the diffuser, so that I'm just not getting too much direct light. I usually found in most weddings when it gets to dark first dance, I am reaching for the flash, even if I have something a little more powerful than D800, because of course renting a camera is an option. But yeah, point that flash upwards or put a diffuser on it so that you're not just blasting the room. If you got the right kind of diffuser, that little crosshairs from the red light will still project and you'll be able to do what you need to do. As an extra thought to that, because there was a lingering thought in my brain about the D800, for the outdoor stuff, no problem at all. And certainly shooting in RAW, you got a lot of flexibility. There were a couple of shots from the family time photos of one of the weddings I covered where I had to do a lot of editing because we were shooting against the back daylight. And even though I was using reflectors and the flash, I still had to pull up the exposure in the shadows quite a bit. I think my wife has more questions.
There's one more from Bobby.
Okay.
What else is great to visit around Brugge?
Let's see. What is great to visit around Brugge? What is great to visit around Brugge? What else is great to visit around Brugge? Well, Bobby, this is one of the most beautiful cities in the world, so it's all beautiful. I'm glad I could answer your question there. And if you haven't discovered every square centimeter or inch of it, well, you're missing out. I don't know why the Tourist Bureau doesn't throw my photos forward with that kind of promo to Bruges a little more. Oh, am I talking local politics? Excuse me. Ladies and gentlemen, I live in beautiful Bruges. I think you know it. You're looking at it in the background of this photo. I'm even going to scroll through a little more because we'll be dancing in Bruges. Well, Bobby, to answer your question for what else is there to see in Bruges, you've been on, I think you went on 2 photo tours with me, and we did the Hidden Bruges tour, which took you through St. Anna over to the windmills, as advertised on the website. Obviously, that's the quieter side of Bruges, but not the only side of Bruges. St. Gilles or St. Gilles is a really beautiful area. If you go outside of the city ring, I mean, I'm just skipping all the main touristy areas in the historic center in the center. Well, you can look at the surrounding countryside because we have a lot of it. I mean, here's your hotel room, but you go outside after your cup of coffee and you have some gorgeous nature to think about. I was hoping for gorgeous nature. Instead, you're looking at my commercial work for you latecomers who are seeing this random slideshow. Yeah, and I would start with the town of Damme, which is Damme. It's 10-minute drive from Bruges at maximum, 20 minutes by bicycle, which I'd recommend even more. If you're here on holiday, do Quasimodo bike tours because Jos is the man, and he has an amazing staff of the man and the woman and the man and all that stuff. And they give a kick-ass bike tour just to give him a free plug because that's what you do in your community. But ladies and gentlemen, Damme would be a good start to seeing beyond Bruges. It's a picturesque medieval little village. It's absolutely stunning. And then from there, you can go on, cross the Dutch border into Sluis, which is Sluis, and another little village. I find a little bigger than Damme and a little surprising to see the sex shops right there on the main street compared to Belgium. But yeah, pretty and worth it if you're out for the day. Oh, that's one of my favorite photos, just to show you the Jos again. Fine, elegant, with a touch of just... Anyways, Yeah, and then outside of Bruges, I'd also check out Ostend if you want a seaside small city that has some character and life to it. Everything from a couple of old sites to, well, mostly rebuilt or freshly new sites, considering the damage it took in World War II. So you can check out the casino, the beach line, and all the modern Belgian coastline features that a place like Ostend features. And then from there, I'd probably just cruise around the area. I should definitely also mention Ypres, or Wiper, as some people end up calling it in the English language. Ypres is also known as Flanders Field, which I think is really beautiful. It's a little bit out of the way from Bruges, as in you're up for, well, you're looking at a 1 hour drive or a couple hours on the train because we don't have an easy connection. Ypres is, part of Flanders Field, and that's where some major battles went down in World War I, and all sorts of nasty stuff happened. But it's still beautiful countryside, and certainly they've honored the dead there with some absolutely special and powerful cemeteries and monuments. And actually, to give another plug to my local community of photo tour guides, even if you do have a car, even if you are happy doing the train, I would really highly, highly recommend doing Quasimodo Flanders Field tours because they've been doing it for 25, 30 years, 30 years with Sharon and Philippe. Sharon is the wonderful, awesome expat Australian who settled with Philippe, who is the mellow local refined with a also fine way in the Belgian fellowship kind of sense. And they for 30 years been doing Quasimodo, which has been a pretty awesome experience for all involved. They are at the top of TripAdvisor, long time for a very good reason. And I've had the good pleasure of going out to Flanders Fields with them. And, this will be good for your photography to an extent if you're doing the group tour, because, of course, in a group tour, you're only going to get so much time compared to going out on your own. But you can also think about hiring them for a private tour. And also, of course, now with the COVID world that we're living in, for the next while at least, they're only doing small groups and with a divider, in case you're wondering, in the minivan. So safe and wonderful, and in that small group, you'll be able to soak in Flanders Field with a little extra time. I'd also say, just in general, to give tour guides a shout out, whether they're photo tour, history tour, bike tour, or otherwise. I think it's always good on holiday to consider getting a tour, whether they're showing you photography or otherwise, because frankly, they're going to know the place better than you, and they're going to show you something that you can soak in and absorb for the photos, but also next to the photos. I mean, for going to Flanders Field, even if I wasn't into photography, that's something I think a guide is worthwhile because they know the place inside out and they know the history inside out. So yay, guides! Yay, photo tour guides, right? Also, come see me as Photo Tour Bruges. We'll be open from we're already open now, but next year also, and onwards. We got low rent. That's why I get to claim the attic. It's not expensive, and I get to broadcast to the internet from here. Boy, howdy. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got 12 minutes and 15 seconds left to this. There's still some viewers here. You haven't run away, and I thank you for that because it's really nice to see that people aren't too spooked by me being myself. Always nice when you go online. I'm sure there will be some troll comments at some point or another as I expand this. And guess what? They're going to get blocked. They're going to get ignored, blocked, and bye-bye. So that is part of the vibe that we're carrying forward on this. Also for future shows, the next one in 2 weeks. Make sure to like Andy McSweeney Photography on Facebook and Instagram for updates. Yeah, we're going to be doing more of the same of creating this fun, loose, open, and I don't know, maybe even funky environment. Funky in a good way. Cha-cha-cha. Yeah, so that we can improve all our photography, from me babbling out on my own photography to helping you with your photography, be it casual, serious, pro, somewhere in the middle. Hey, we all start somewhere and we all go somewhere. 12 minutes to kill. Any questions, ladies and germs? This is your last chance. I'm looking at the wife and she says, I'm going to take a little look over on other pages just in case because I don't want to miss your questions. No, it's all good here. Nobody seems to want to leave me questions there. All right. Rock and roll. We've run out of stuff to say. No, we haven't. I could talk all day about photography, boys and girls. What photo have I stopped on? I stopped on the Yas. I could talk about this photo, but why don't we move the slideshow forward? Give me your questions. Ask me your thoughts. Give me any feedback. What do you think of the format of the show? Am I being too crazy, too loose, too open? What's going on? Are you enjoying these photos? Am I wasting my time here? I want to know. And you're also welcome to send me that privately after the show through Messenger or to info@andymcsweeney.com. And in case you joined the show late, he says to remind you all of options at hand. I am going to be reposting this on Facebook, on YouTube tomorrow. So if you go over to youtube.com/Andy McPhoto, or just run a search for me, Andy McSweeney, you'll be able to see my channel and, you'll be able to watch this all over again as I'm slightly awkward towards the end of the show trying to figure out cool things to say so that you're not bored and maybe even tune in later. Woohoo! It's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how far this goes. I have a good feeling about this. I'm enjoying this. I'm getting silly comments, but nothing too ridiculous. I'm getting extremely good questions, which I absolutely love to hear and want to hear some more of. And, hey, what do we got over here? Oh, look at this. I found a whole stack of photos on Photo Tour Bruges. All right. Pat McGur. Pat. I'm trying not to use last names. I think we can all keep some privacy on this platform. Pat, you're going to help me finish off the show with your awesome questions. Pat, do you include Dama in any of your photo tours? Excellent question, Pat. I was going to start that this year, and then 2020 sort of got canceled and put to the side, and photo tours have been very few. As a matter of fact, last year I was very, very, very happy to be hired by the local tourist office, Visit Dama, so that I could do a photo tour out there for one of their community events, whose name, of course, escapes me right now. It was a good time, and Dama is absolutely beautiful. I was, as I say, going to roll out a private tour option for Dama this year, but that's going to be for a little bit later, probably over winter just to release it, and then spring to actually be active as probably a feasible option for travel in this tough year of 2020/2021. But yes, I will absolutely be including Dama on here. All right. Thank you, Pat, for helping me promo stuff I'm going to be doing soon. And I will remind all of you, like I told Bobby when she asked what else is there to see in Bruges. We got a lot here that isn't just Bruges with the city center and the historic bit, and then the whole 2/3 of it that isn't history, tourist land, but actually a gorgeous, beautiful, little, charming spot of the world with really good beer. Yeah, Dama's right around the corner, as is Flanders Fields, as well as a bunch of other sites. Thank you, Pat, for that. I'm glad. Oh, I'm glad I pronounced your name properly. Wow, instant feedback here. Awesome. Yeah, cool. Okay, let me just check any more. Oh, Pat, I'm also going to read out your other comment because I think this is worth it. Bruges is a photographer's dream. I'd love to return to look again, to again click away like crazy. Oh, you and me both, Pat. I miss you and all my tour guests so much. It is another reason I'm really enjoying doing this live cast and why there's going to be more to come every 2 weeks. It's good to reconnect with some of you and show you, well, in this case, in the background for a few minutes, the street market in Bruges. And as much as possible, I love showing you all so much of Bruges. It's a really gorgeous city, and it really is a photographer's dream. I gotta say, this beautiful wife that you should see with a couple of beers, one for me, one for her. she's the main reason I live here. I mean, it ain't exactly for the weather. But I've always been patient and loved Bruges quietly in one way or another. If you watch the movie In Bruges where one of them loves it and one of them hates it, well, both of them are me. We can talk about that in person if you're really curious. But especially over the last, I don't know, 10 years, as this lady over here doesn't get sick of me. And I open up business and find my place as a photo guide and photo tour Bruges, etc., as well as Andy the photographer. And I think most importantly, get to know my community of photographers and otherwise. It's a magical place. And I look forward to seeing all of you back here soon because even if you don't take my photo tour, it is a gorgeous spot and the beer is tasty, tasty, tasty. Food ain't bad either. We all put on Corona kilos. It was part of our national coping mechanism. All right, let me see if I can dig out one more comment or two. Love the photos. Thank you, Bobby. Again, I'm trying not to say your last names out of some sense of privacy that can be kept somewhere on Facebook. By the way, please tell me if you'd like to hear this on other platforms. Like I said, it's going to be on YouTube tomorrow. But for the live interaction side of things, I have some options. YouTube, Instagram, all those. We can do live casts. It'll have to get a little bit bigger than 14 people watching throughout for me to invest on that because that's monthly subscriptions in the age of really not great business and tourism. But yeah, let me know. I want to know what you guys think of this show. Don't be shy either. If you want to keep it, polite and not stress out that I might be getting negative feedback publicly, just send it to me privately. And frankly, since I've given over 2,000 of you feedback on your photos, unless you've held your camera really close and gone, no, I'm fine, which is fine. Yeah, I've given out enough feedback that I am due, so do not be shy, please. And thank you very much. All right. Woo! I've talked through 2 hours on photography. It has been a long time. God, just drink a little tea before we all take it home there. Ladies and gentlemen, how convenient that I'm at this photo of Mrs. Andy because I know for a fact the next photo is red means stop. I've really enjoyed this, and I hope you have too. Unless there are any other questions, I'm going to be signing off in a couple minutes. On the way out the door, I do want to remind you that I am open as Photo Tour Bruges, whether it was lockdown and a weird year for tourism or otherwise. I always run my open tours in a small group of 4 people, so if you are dropping by, please feel free and know that we are not necessarily 100%, I have to legally say, corona-proof, but we do our very best here. I will make sure all the guests wear masks, including myself. And if you drop by joining me as Photo Tour Bruges, well, I can say right now, if you use the promo code ThisPhotoLife as one word on checkout on the website phototourbruges.com, you'll get 15% off. And hey, if you contact me through private message or email to info@andymcsweeney.com, I'll give you a promo code for 20% off, which I was hoping to have set up, but I wasn't quite able to get organized in time. Or at least the system didn't let me organize it. So yeah, 20% off for those of you who want to get money off on a tour. And actually, I've pushed the tour enough time, so I'll just, say please feel free to come by. If you come by as a group of 4 or more, contact me beforehand, and maybe I can do you a special price. I'm happy to say, by the way, that even though there haven't been many photo tours, I have had some client work as a photographer. So things are surviving there. And, well, I even have 1 or 2 tours, and that's not being humble, in September that are going to help pay the bills with groups. And they all got nice discounts because they came in groups of more than 4, keeping under the limit of 10 that we're currently limited to in these corona times. Yeah, you can drop by and see me as Photo Tour Bruges, and I'll do you a special price if you go over 4 people. And if not, you can email me, drop me a message for 20% off. Last but not least, I guess also I should let you know what's coming up in future beyond this show and so forth. I'm going to be releasing new stuff, new material, some of the photos you've seen today and some you haven't in short coming times. Like you can see in the top right-hand corner of your screen, I am at Andy McPhoto or at Photo Tour Bruges on Instagram and Facebook. If you find me as one of those or both of those, you're going to see some new work coming out from me in the coming months. Because next to figuring out how to plug in a GoPro to my computer and getting decent sound, figuring out how to share screens, I've also been busy, just taking photos and making art, like the job description says. And I've been feeling really blessed to do it. I'm glad I have Mrs. Andy right here. There she is. To keep me company. And I've been really glad to have some of you stay in touch and especially to tune in today. So I'm going to leave you on that. There's a couple more comments that I guess I'll take for the glory and all this good stuff. Margot says, thanks, Andy. We will be back and I'll look you up. Promise, hang in there. Thank you, Margot. We're hanging in there. And Enchong over in the Philippines, I believe, says it's 3 a.m. here and happy to see you with amazing photo tour and friendship memories. We hope to be back there soon. Regards to the beautiful wife from me and Sal. See, the people thing, interacting with people, that's what I miss so much this year in 2020, whether it's been on photo tour or in person. I'm so glad that we have this technology to at least make do and be the methadone next to the pure, unadulterated hit of getting together in person. And I guess to throw a last shameless plug down, I guess I'll be back in 2 weeks to do this again. Drop me some feedback, including if you think Sunday is a better day than Wednesday, because I'm thinking that, maybe Tuesday, but I thought I'd start on Sunday evenings at 8 p.m. Central European Time. Thank you, everyone who asked me questions, left comments, even you, Paul, with your silliness. It's good to hear from the old man over in Ghent. And it's good to hear from all of you. So don't be shy to drop me a line. You know where to find me, including on the socials. And ladies and gentlemen, I thank you so much for your time. We have accomplished 2 hours of me talking about photography again, and I've missed it. Whew! Thanks so much for dropping by. I'm Andy McSweeney of Andy McSweeney and Photo Tour Bruges. Andy McSweeney Photography and Photo Tour Bruges. Look at that. I've lost my practice for this. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you to the wife for sitting patiently next to me and feeding me questions. And thank you. I've really enjoyed this, and this is not going to be the last time. But until then, take care. And like I said on the podcast, this photo life, which may even come back to life if there's interest. Put me down, go away, get out there, and get shooting. See ya. Bye-bye.